All right, thanks for joining. Again, as it was in the previous, this is to align between UX and engineering, and I put in some initial notes. I'll move this one briefly down so that if you have something, you can put it in there below, because I pre-filled some questions I had. I was wondering about the first one, and let me. I see this one has already been resolved, I think, mostly. Let me share my screen because I got way too many tabs open here.
What's the current tab count?
Sorry? Yeah.
How many tabs?
I don't know, like 30 or something. That's rookie numbers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I tried to keep it smaller. This seems to be already be done. But this kind of loops into like a later point of mine where Etienne gave those async updates on like that are kind of given throughout this issue, like, hey, async update, status of completeness, confidence, like where are we doing, merge request, he's noted them here as well. And I was wondering how we are. What is our current process here? Is that the aligned process that we do it with? Like, how is merge request scoping decided, and how do we keep ourselves informed in that sense? Because at the same time, with for example the let me see which one was that. With this one, like allow parent projects developers to create pipelines for merge requests for fork MRs. There's a whole bunch of MRs that gone in through this and got merged. But I wasn't aware that we were already, like, things were already well developed. You know, like I'm a little out of the loop is what I'm trying to say. So what I'm trying to understand is like, all right, how do we do merge request scoping? How do we keep ourselves informed?
Yeah. I would just I'll just chime in there that like the async updates are great. You know, I think they're super helpful for everyone to do that one thing of kind of be informed about the progress of where this effort is at. The thing about the process, though, is that we have we've kind of left it up to the individual engineer about how they want to format and provide that update. There are like you know, like very loose suggestions in the handbook about like here's some examples, and then the tool Telltale can give you like some. It can kind of basically do it for you too as well. So. Is like the thing that you're asking here is like that everyone add an MR to the async updates, or which part is like the informative piece in the async update that works for you?
So from this side where Etienne here gives async updates, I like that a lot. My only comment there is like, please give us a mention. You know, like you can post all the updates you want inside an issue, but that doesn't really mean that everyone is aware that, you know, an update has been posted to an issue. I don't know about you, but I work with a to-do workflow instead of an email workflow. So I only get notifications when I'm actually mentioned at an issue. So things go past me, even though I'm dogfooding the application to some extent. But the other hand is like, especially for this issue, this got merged without me even knowing that we were at that state. So like, hey, I pushed the designs, like we've discussed it was feasible, things were going in, and then if we look at the MRs here, we see there's a bunch of MRs. But let's look at one of the latest ones. I don't know why this is not loading the comments here. Give me a second. It's always hard to see which MR now. So this one, no. I think it's this one. No, also not. Nope. How do you do that? Like, yeah, let's look at this one. I think this is a good example. Like, hey, show security warning model for fork pipelines. And then we can see here, for example, at approval, not that it needs perfect approval from me or so, for example, but like Marcel is in there, like all the engineers are in there, but I'm not in there. Like I'm feeling a little left out here. Like why am I not aware of this at all? Like I have no idea this is going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of speaks to like the bigger workflow processy type things about, I think, and where UX, where you want involvement in that process. You want to have like, say, like a final say, or to be part of a review step or verification step or something. That's,
yeah.
I'm not sure that we've done that to date as a group.
That is the thing. Like I don't want to be a bottleneck. On the other hand, if we're gonna merge things and like considerable UX depth or bugs are created, it also falls on my plate. So and there's, I think, like I've been discussing this with Nadia in the past. It's been a little bit on a standstill at the moment, but like to create true alignment on what is expected from each side regarding the merge request creation, approval, and merge phases of a merge request, like who's involved and why and what is expected. I mean, ideally, like I create the issue, I discuss, involve everyone, we get to a solution, and then I never see it again because I'm not concerned with it anymore. That's not the reality, of course. And I don't want to approve every MR, but I want to at least be informed, I would say, to say like, hey, can I give it a look? Can I give it at least some kind of like a functional walkthrough so I can say, hey, I saw this, or I noticed this, maybe we need to follow up issue to scope this effort out and follow up on it, because I don't think it worked as well as we initially thought, or I don't know, something like that. And that feedback loop is what I'm looking for.
Okay. I think that's helpful. Yeah, I mean, from engineer perspective, like Jason or Andrew, like, where do you, like, is it just a matter of recognizing what pieces need to be, like, how to loop in Dimitri, or is there some other kind of thing we need to put in place?
I think there's like a balance of triviality around it. I would agree. Like if I had implemented that modal, I would have pinged UX on it just so they could take a look on it. That might be more due to the back end people taking up more front end work and being less familiar with the front end process.
That's fair. Yeah.
The reviewers and the maintainers can sometimes not look at the whole picture of the MR and realize that UX hasn't been pinged because there's so many names and so many comments and so much discussion going on that if I'm coming in to review an MR, I'm trying to stay focused on the code itself unless something seems really, really wonky, you know? So that would be why, and it's never entirely clear if you're coming into an MR in a strange section of the code who exactly is the UX responsible person. So we kind of leave it up to the individual contributors unless it's a community contribution.
Yeah, I think like community contribution, I have a point on that later. I think that is to some extent an additional process that I think is a little bit different from our internal MRs, as you will.
Yeah.
Because like it is a less of a groomed state where the MR is created from the original concept. Sometimes the issue is like not a proposal at all, or there's not alignment on what the actual solution is going to be, and etc. So I would like to scope that part out of the discussion here. But on the other hand, I do agree with you that the MRs, like when I see them, often they're like full of like conversation, like there's like a lot of it. Like I often feel like I'm like I jump into the deep, and that's not bad per se, but with the merge quest scoping efforts going on, like, hey, we want this backend, we want this front end, we want this for something else. Like I almost would say that a merge quest is not the ideal medium anymore if those merge quest scoping is going on in a certain way, because it doesn't convey the complete picture. However, like let's have that as a thing that is noted. If there is certain merge quest scoping going on and a single merge quest doesn't convey like the end result of the feature we're trying to implement, then that merge quest is not the good medium for conversation. However, in an ideal world, you would have some functional review to some extent before optimizing code, and there's no room for any small nudges or fixes anymore. Then, as a third thing, I want to point out, like, hey, say that we have that merge quest scoping going on, and things are in complete form and are going to be merged. Then there needs to be that feedback loop in the end to then not create like immediate changes, but to at least create follow-ups if need be, and that we have a follow-up like feedback loop to say, all right, we now implemented this, let's look at this. Did we actually solve the problem? Because that's where product is mostly concerned with.
Yeah, that gets a little bit challenging when we're doing like these feature flag rollouts, right? Because that's the other thing too, is if something is behind a feature flag, unless you go and set up your GDK and everything, the best you can do is look at like some pictures or maybe a video. And a lot of the times these larger features are just, they're too big to be contained in one MR. So do we need, if it's like, do we need to extend the verification process to inform you that it's like deployed on staging or enabled on staging or something like that, so that you can go and investigate it? Or like, what do you think would work here?
Yeah, to be honest, like I think both from a perspective of review slash um, verification or validation, as well as evangelization of what we're actually shipping. I think for both of those causes, I would love to see a message posted in our Slack and say, we just shipped this. Let's go into the review phase, or let's go into, I don't know, whatever. So we can see like, all right, we're shipping all this amazing stuff. Let's make sure that, like everything is as awesome as we think it is, and that we don't miss out on any like misconfigured things, and we create the appropriate follow-ups and schedule them accordingly to priority and severity. But yeah, like I would love to see that. Like I don't want to per se jump in the merge quest, because I know that has caused friction and causes friction throughout like the review process. There's another person to wait on for feedback, blah blah. We're stretching out the merge quest, but I do think that the follow-up, the feedback loop of like, hey, we shipped this, now let's look at it like together. I think that is currently missing in my opinion.
So as kind of an initial process, what if when we close issues once they're deployed on .com, right? Um, as an initial process, what if we just we ping maybe you and Orit when we go to close the issue, and we can be like, this is deployed on .com, you should be able to check this out. If it's behind a feature flag, we can have like we can figure out if it's appropriate to give access to it yet or not. And then that verification can happen. Or would you prefer maybe something earlier in the deployment process, like, because there's a like things go through, they go to, I forget what the first one is, But there's 3 or 4 environments things kind of propagate through before they hit .com, right?
Yeah, there's at least a canary stage, right?
Yeah, the big issue with that is that we're not really notified when things hit those environments either. Because what happens is an NMR gets like a what are those labels called? A scoped label changed on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets buried in emails, right? And then there's the verification to do issue, which I don't know. I haven't seen one in a little while. I think I heard something about them not working recently, but those are mostly to make sure that things aren't completely broken before they hit .com either. So they kind of move quickly.
I think like simple's mostly the best. I love your like your proposal of, hey, if we close this issue, um, let's make sure that product is notified of that. I think that is a very simple thing to do, and kind of works, right? Like it puts it to do on my plate and on Orit's plate to make sure, like, hey, let's walk this through. Let's make sure it aligns with what we thought it was, and we can scope out any additional things. I think that would be at least already an improvement. Like ultimately, what I think, but this is an assumption, right, is that it needs an additional workflow label to say like, hey, has this been product verified or something like that? Like, does this break production? No. All right, pretty cool. Let's push it.
I mean,
But does it solve the problem fully as we want it? Like that's another thing, right?
yeah, there's a solution verification workflow label, Isn't there? I'm not sure what that one is specifically for, though. I don't think it gets used a lot.
Do you mean solution validation or solution verification?
Well, maybe it's solution validation.
Because the solution validation is regarding, I mean, in a way, it is exactly what we're saying here, but on a more official. I mean, you're right. Like I would say, solution validation is the correct label here. But if we close the issue is nowhere to be found on any issue boards. And not every issue should we deem worthy to be solution validated, because then we need to do, get external participants in there and make sure that we, test it thoroughly, blah, blah, blah. Well, like I would say there's an initial pre-solution validation phase where you can just say, all right, does this align with what we were thinking? Or does it miss a few marks and we need to improve with like a small follow-up issue or something like that? Let me propose the closing of the issue with Orit and see what she has to say. And then I'll update in the Slack channel and see how we can make this a little bit of a process in our handbook page. But does it sound good to all of you?
There might be, I mean, there might be one tricky point there where like maintainers are going to be the one who are merging MRs that will then close the issue, right?
Well, we don't generally do that anymore, though, do we? Like I haven't set up an auto close MR since last year sometime.
Okay.
I think it's still kind of in the default MR template if you like create a merge request from an issue.
By the way, on that, I haven't said like the closing MR. Often I'm looking at an MR, it's like, which issue is this? And instead of saying closing this issue in the MR description, there's just nothing right now. It's just like, just figure out which issue this MR belongs to. It's all up to you. Like, if I can make one request, please at least mention the issue in the MR description. That would help me a lot, because I'm out of the blue. Like I have no idea.
I'm pretty bad for that sometimes. It's true. It's kind of it would be nice if I could just put them in the commit message and it would do it all automatically, but I did that once and DangerBot was like, you shouldn't do that. You should put full links in instead of just the references. I was like, okay, Danger. But then if you put the full link in, it doesn't do like the referential backlinking. So
All right. Sounds good. So I think we have some kind of like an action item here. I'll discuss which I have in 8 minutes. So I'll go from there and bring it back to the Slack channel. So I think that's good.
yeah, the only other idea I have that you may want to propose to her if she doesn't like the issues being closed before they're validated is that we just assign them to you two and you sort it out.
Sorry, you said like instead of closing, we assign to you and you figure it out.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Let me discuss that with Orit as well.
All right.
Close the issue and reassign. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I think that might actually be a good idea. On the other hand, I don't want like 20 issues coming my way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like you deal with it. It's like, ooh. I feel the pain. I can understand. Let me see, because this list has been going on here for a little bit. There is a new product design specific handbook page. I've been throwing merge requests right and left at Chase here and there. So sorry for that. The URL is actually, let me grab the URL. So if you want to check it out, I'm constantly expanding upon it. And what I'm trying to do here is if there's duplicated content in the pages, I'm creating a partial that kind of updates it for both the engineering page as well as this page, because they are kind of the same, but they approach the stage group from a different perspective. So it becomes a little bit more manageable to keep aligned. And it also allows me to, how do you say, to get better ingrained into the processes of engineering. So I'm learning as I'm like trying to see what it is about. Like, oh, can I add little tidbits of information that I already had documented in the UX page, or that I see as like improvements from other stage groups, etc. It's a small, slow process, but if you want to see what UX is about or product design, however you want to call it, from progressive delivery side, here's all the things you can find: recordings, OKRs, job to be done. Like it's all work in progress, but it's pretty interesting page, I think. I'm gonna, yeah, this one is actually pretty interesting. I want to briefly show what I mean here. You said like, hey, we're in this workflow where we have feature flags and they're turned on, and there's this iteration cycle of like, hey, how are we scoping out the effort that is, needed for the MVC versus what is going afterwards, like as a follow-up. And I have a little pet peeve of mine, which is this custom emoji issue, which I still need to spend more time on. But what I've done for this is like kind of make it visual what is happening for like, what is the MVC scope? What is the work that needs to be done before that? What is after? When are the feature flags created? When are they turned on versus off? And is being made user facing. So my question here would be, do you think this is helpful? And B, is there something similar of a process already going on for feature development?
I think that does a pretty good job of capturing the unwritten process that happens.
Yeah, because currently every engineer decides by themselves, like, all right, I'm going to create like a feature flag, yes or no. I'm going to turn it on or off, yes or no. Like what is included in the MVC? Like, this is going to be a like multiple milestone effort, or is this going to be a 3 MRs within one single milestone effort? Like all these kind of things I'm kind of wondering about, to be able to be better at developer handoff when I'm pushing my information towards engineering, like, hey, I'm thinking like this about this. Does this make sense?
Yeah. I think those judgment calls are really up to the individual engineer. And I think we try in PD, we try to make those decisions around waiting time, if that makes sense.
I'm unsure. What is waiting time?
Like when we weigh the issues.
Oh, waiting.
WEI. Yeah. WEI.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
At least that's what when I try to do, I try to do all of that kind of like, this is how I expect the feature to be developed from start to finish.
Yeah, I think what I envision is that product is a little bit more proactive in this as well, and that we say like, all right, this we don't just look at the current upcoming milestone, but hey, how does this relate across like 3 milestones, right? Like because often especially for the feature flag stuff in the past, I've seen like, all right, we're gonna develop this, we're gonna develop that, we're gonna develop this, but there's not like a really, at least it's hard to find a holistic view of what a roadmap for feature flags is. And I think it would be helpful from a product towards engineering side that you also know like, all right, I'm going to develop this, but this is going to be next. So better, I know, optimize the code to make room for that, or don't code myself into a corner where I make it harder for myself in the future. At least that's how I envision it or assume it to be. But yeah, decision around weighing time makes sense. It's mostly a thing that I was wondering about. So I'll see if I can include some of that in the future, if it makes sense, especially with A/B testing. I'm going to try this out.
Yeah, that one's going to be big and scary. Be
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Tomorrow I got a UX showcase presentation on it.
I'm wondering if that one should be an epic.
Oh, it certainly should.
You should just promote it while you're in there next time.
I mean, the current, I don't know which issue you were talking about, but like I have one issue, which is just focusing around the research. It has nothing to do with any implementation as of yet.
I think I'm starting to wonder if a lot of these like larger features that we're trying to build out should be more epic sized, and then we can have like an MVC issue and then easily capture all of the not the validation, maybe, yeah, the validation feedback and the iteration refinements that we want to do afterwards.
Yeah, I can give you, because we're almost going to go over time. I need to go to another meeting, but a little sneak peek of what I'm trying to do in the next couple of months is convert our epic structure to jobs to be done. And then under those jobs to be done, you will have your, like, all right, this is feature flags, and then you have that, and this is A/B testing, then this is the MVC part of the A/B testing, this is like the next stuff, and there's this thing called vertical stacking, I believe it's called, where you're gonna try to put like value in each iteration, that it's like doable from both product and engineering. With this whole thing, currently it's still like in general buckets here and there, inconsistently done, but it is something that I'm working with Orit on to let it make more sense, I would say. But yeah, very good suggestion. Thanks for that. I'm gonna call it close because I need to go to the other meeting. Thank you all for joining. I think the rest of the things are not super important, except for, I think we already discussed this. Maybe I should move it, try to experiment with that. And the community contribution merge quest flow is something that we can discuss next time. I think this is pretty interesting. I would love to know your thoughts on how this currently goes and those kind of things. So thank you all for joining. And if you have additional questions or thoughts, please leave them in the Slack thread somewhere, and we can discuss async. Cheers.
Thank you.